They laughed at her in the interview room. Then she took over the company. I walked into the conference room feeling every ounce of self-consciousness I'd carried with me since the moment I woke up that morning. My Target heels clicked nervously on the polished marble floor, heels I bought on a strict budget, not from some trendy boutique where the other candidates probably got theirs. My hair was shoved into a rushed, imperfect bun because I'd hit snooze one too many times. And my laptop bag. Well, that old thing still smelled like library dust from the community college where I spent countless nights studying under fluorescent lights. Around me, the room buzzed with confidence and a kind of effortless polish I didn't have. Women in silk blouses, the kind that whispered wealth and power with every movement. Men with expensive cologne, their leather briefcases so pristine you could see your reflection. They smiled easily, shook hands with the panel like it was all routine, like they already owned this moment before it even started. I was just trying not to trip over the rug. The rug, by the way, was a gaudy thing, deep red with gold accents, a little threadbare in the corners. I glanced down, catching the tip of my heel snagging on a loose thread. A tiny disaster, but the kind that feels enormous when you're already on edge. The woman in the centre of the panel was impossible to miss. Sharp jawline, cold eyes behind sleek black frames, and bright red lipstick that almost seemed too fierce for the sterile interview room. She looked me over like I was a bug on her windshield, an annoyance she couldn't quite flick off. "Name?" she asked without even bothering to look up from the stack of resumes in front of her. "Lacey Monroe," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady even though my stomach was doing somersaults. She clicked her pen loudly, the sound echoing like a judge's gavel in the silent room. Then, without missing a beat, she laughed. Not a polite chuckle or a nervous giggle, a full-on sharp, dismissive laugh. Like I'd just told the worst joke she'd ever heard. She turned to her assistant, smirking. "I thought this was for serious applicants," she said loud enough for me to hear every word. The room seemed to fall into a ripple of quiet chuckles, side eyes and subtle smirks. One guy openly yawned, stretching his mouth wide as if he was bored with the whole charade. I swallowed hard. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. But I had no choice but to sit down. My hands trembled slightly as I set my bag on the floor. I took a deep breath, telling myself to keep it together. They didn't know me yet. They didn't know my story. So I'd just have to prove them wrong. As I settled into the hard chair, I noticed their eyes flicking between me and my resume, like they were looking for the cracks in my story. I caught a few whispered comments out of the corner of my ear, words like bookstore clerk, community college, small-time side hustle. I felt the weight of their judgment pressing down, like invisible hands trying to squeeze the confidence right out of me. And yet, somewhere beneath all that doubt, a tiny flame of determination sparked. I wasn't just some girl who stumbled into the wrong room. I was Lacey Monroe, and I wasn't about to let this moment define me. But first, I had to get through the next hour without breaking. I'd been preparing for this interview for months, researching the company, practicing answers in front of my cracked bathroom mirror, scribbling notes on napkins at work during lunch breaks. But nothing could have prepared me for this atmosphere. The sharp stares, the unspoken, "you don't belong here" vibe so thick you could almost taste it. I glanced around the room, noticing the way everyone else seemed to glide through the process. Polished resumes, rehearsed smiles, and that air of, "I already got the job." And then there was me. Still clutching my bag, my shoes pinching my feet after a long day, trying to ignore the strange smell of coffee mixed with expensive perfume. When it was my turn, the red lipstick woman barely made eye contact. Her questions were clipped, almost cruel. "Your last job was at a bookstore?" "Yes, ma'am," I answered, steadying my voice. I managed their social media page, grew the followers from a few hundred to over 9,000 in less than a year. She raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. You designed bracelets and sold them online? Yes, I created everything, from the concept to the packaging, and handled all the sales and marketing. There was a pause, the kind of pause that screamed, not good enough. And you went to community college? Yes, I did. And while I was there, I juggled 2 part-time jobs and took care of my mum after her surgery. She leaned back, folding her arms like she was done wasting her time. You're not what we're looking for, she said flatly. Maybe try something less corporate. The words hit me like a punch. Less corporate. Like I was some kind of side character. Someone who didn't belong in the world they were trying to create. I nodded politely, my face burning, but inside I was breaking. When I left the building, I didn't hold back anymore. I cried behind a trash bin in the parking lot, silent tears of frustration and heartbreak. I wanted so badly to be seen. But more than that, I wanted to show them what they'd missed. After that interview, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. I left the building with my head down, my heart heavy, and my dreams feeling smaller than ever. The words, "You're not what we're looking for," echoed in my mind like a broken record. But what hurt the most wasn't just rejection. It was the way they dismissed me before I even had a chance to show what I was capable of. Back home, I sat on the edge of my bed, replaying every moment. I remembered the sharp looks, the barely concealed smirks, and that laugh, like I was some joke they couldn't wait to forget. I thought about the woman with the red lipstick, the queen of cold eyes who made me feel invisible and irrelevant all at once. And yet, beneath the shame and anger, something stubborn refused to die. A voice inside whispered, "They don't see the real me, but I will make them see." The truth is, my resume was far from typical. I hadn't followed the usual path, no Ivy League degree, no fancy internships, no connections waiting in the wings. Instead, I had stories, real ones. I'd spent 2 years working at a small local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous. Most days, it was just me behind the counter, dusting shelves, recommending novels and ringing up customers. But I didn't stop there. I saw potential in the store's social media presence, something no one else cared about. So I took a chance. I asked the manager if I could run their Instagram page. With no budget and only free online tutorials to guide me, I began crafting posts, sharing new arrivals, spotlighting staff pics, creating giveaways, and even filming short videos with quirky book recommendations. Followers started trickling in, then grew steadily, until we hit 9,000 in under a year. That was my first taste of creative marketing, and it ignited a fire in me. Next came the bracelets. I had always loved making jewellery. In college, I designed bracelets and sold them online, through Etsy and Instagram. Each piece was handcrafted, inspired by moments from my life. It wasn't just a side hustle, it was my creative outlet and a way to contribute to my family's finances. I handled every step: designing, photographing, packaging, shipping, customer service, and social media marketing. I learned about branding the hard way: trial and error, long nights, and occasional heartbreaks when orders were delayed or products didn't sell. But I kept going. I was building something from nothing. Meanwhile, my mum was recovering from surgery. I balanced late-night hospital visits with early morning shifts and studying for exams. My days were packed with responsibility, stress, and a constant push to prove I could do it all. Yet, in that interview room, none of that mattered. When the panel tore my resume apart, it wasn't just skepticism. They dismissed my experience as irrelevant. "You worked at a bookstore?" one asked, as if that were a punchline. "You sold bracelets online?" another scoffed, barely hiding the disdain. "You went to community college?" The woman with the red lipstick spat out like it was a disease. I explained myself patiently, hoping they'd listen. Yes, I managed the bookstore's social media page, growing it to 9,000 followers in less than a year. Yes, I designed every bracelet myself and handled the entire business from scratch. Yes, I juggled 2 jobs and took care of my mum during her recovery. But their eyes glazed over. They didn't want to hear it. They wanted the polished candidate, the one with the traditional credentials and the scripted answers. The woman with the lipstick leaned back, her face unreadable. "You're not what we're looking for," she said coldly. "Maybe try something less corporate." I nodded and smiled, but inside I felt like I'd been knocked down. After I left, I spent that night questioning everything. Was I fooling myself? Was this world only for people who fit a certain mould? For those who never had to struggle? For the privileged? But then something unexpected happened. 2 weeks later, I woke up to a flood of notifications on my phone. My heart skipped when I saw the headline. Internship interview goes viral after brutal dismissal. Someone had leaked the security camera footage, and the audio, from my interview. There I was on the screen, sitting quietly, answering questions. Then the woman's voice rang out clear and sharp. "She looked like she came off a bus. She probably just came for the snacks." It was like a punch to the gut, but it was also my moment of reckoning. Millions saw it. And among them, someone very important, my dad. What they didn't know was that my dad was the founder of Nova Studios, one of the top branding agencies in New York. A man who built his empire from the ground up, someone who understood grit and hustle better than anyone. When he saw that clip, he didn't just feel protective, he felt proud. Without hesitation, he reposted the video on his own social media with one simple caption. "You disrespected my daughter. Now watch her work." That line was a lifeline. Suddenly, the story shifted. People weren't just laughing at me, they were rallying behind me. Interviews flooded my inbox. Podcasts wanted to hear my story. Companies invited me to speak. And Brimwell Media? The same company that had dismissed me? They sent a personal email asking for a second chance. I read the message twice, then a third time. But instead of rushing back, I sent them a polite thank you note and attached a playlist called "You Missed Your Shot." I wasn't bitter. I was done chasing approval from people who couldn't see my worth. Today, I co-run a new creative division at Nova Studios, a place dedicated to hiring overlooked talent from non-traditional backgrounds, just like me. And the funny thing? Last week, we reviewed a pitch deck from Brimwell Media. Guess who led the call? Me. In the same heels they laughed at, but this time I wasn't the girl hoping for a seat at the table. I owned the table. Taking that call from Brimwell Media felt surreal. Their email had arrived weeks after my story went viral, after my dad's repost sent shockwaves through social media. For a moment, I wondered if this was some kind of prank, or if they really meant it, offering me a second chance after how they had treated me. But when I read the words again, the polite offer of a second interview felt more like a quiet apology. And honestly, it wasn't what I wanted anymore. I sat at my desk, the hum of the city outside my apartment window, and thought about how far I'd come. From the girl hiding behind a worn laptop bag to someone who was starting to shape the future of an industry. I typed a reply, polite, professional, and firm. "Thank you for the offer. I'm no longer looking for a seat at your table, but I wish you luck." And I hit send. That playlist I attached, "You Missed Your Shot," was my way of saying, "I'm here now. And you didn't see me coming." Running the new creative division at Nova Studios is everything I dreamed it could be and more. Every day I get to work with people who remind me of myself, talented, ambitious but overlooked because they don't fit the traditional mold. We hire folks with unconventional backgrounds, community college grads, career changers, self-taught creatives, and people who have fought harder than most to get where they are. Because I know what it's like to be dismissed, underestimated, and laughed at. Our mission isn't just about business. It's about rewriting the rules, about creating a space where diversity of experience isn't a liability, but a superpower. I walk into work each morning, sometimes slipping on those same Target heels I wore to that humiliating interview. The heels that once made me feel out of place are now a reminder of how far I've come. Just last week, I led a major call with Brimwell Media, the same company where I was once mocked, dismissed, and laughed at. They were pitching to us now. I could feel their eyes on me as I spoke, respect, curiosity, maybe even a little disbelief. The power dynamic had shifted, dramatically. I wasn't the girl hoping for a seat anymore. I was the one calling the shots. The woman who once sneered at me had no idea who I was. And that's the sweetest part of all. Because success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about standing tall in the face of doubt. It's about turning humiliation into fuel, rejection into opportunity. And it's about owning your story, every messy, imperfect, glorious part of it. So if you ever feel like you don't belong, like you're the wrong person in the wrong place, remember this. Sometimes the world doesn't see your worth at first. Sometimes they laugh. But if you keep going, keep believing, keep working, one day you'll be the one they can't ignore. You'll own the room, the table, the moment, and they'll have no choice but to watch. Because that's the power of resilience. That's the power of grit. That's the power of being unapologetically you. What would you rate our story from 1 to 10?